These Indians aren't getting ready to go on the warpath. In fact, they're probably the friendliest regiment in Alabama. The Cherokees all belong to Boy Scout Troop 29, and they're from the Alabama School for the Deaf Reservation in Talladega. Their specialty isn't scalp hunting, but dancing. Every year, Troop 29 travels throughout the state competing with other Boy Scout troops doing what they enjoy most, the horse stand, feather, fluffy, and chief dance. Next month, the Talladega Indians compete in Birmingham with 7 district troops in the state. Scoutmaster Moran Colburn says his Indian scouts are accustomed to scalping first-place trophies and occasional second and third-place honors when they compete. He says it takes 1 to 2 hours to learn and practice the dances, but Colburn says the young men don't mind, and they seldom get tired of the dances they love.
No, never tired. Never tired. They just keep on dancing and dancing. They enjoy it. It's really in their heart. Boys teach. They learn to dance. They learn them very quick, and they memorize them and know them from now on.
Perhaps Sitting Bull would have been proud of these Indians. Kim Davis, WSFA, TV News.
It's called the B stamp, and the post office says it's an interim stamp. The reason is that the U.S. Post Office didn't get the 20-cent rate it asked for, and there haven't been enough 18-cent stamps printed yet. The new rate will bring the post office $2.75 billion in increased revenue, but postal authorities say the additional 2 cents a letter would have brought in $1 billion more. The post office will use the increased revenue to make up the $306 million deficit it suffered last year due to inflation, and postal authorities say that deficit is increasing. The post office also wants more funds so it can fully automate mail processing, which is successfully used in several large cities. Montgomery Postmaster John Williams says an automated postal system would save $600 million a year by replacing manual sortation and by making distribution more accurate. Williams says there are 74,000 less postal employees today than in 1970, but through mechanization, the system is handling 20 billion more pieces of mail. Montgomery post offices alone handle 1 million pieces of mail a day. Jane Matheson, WSFA, TV News.
Montgomery police say 23-year-old Mark Britton of 1625 Sanford Drive was driving north on Norman Bridge Road about 3:30 this morning when he apparently lost control of his pickup truck. Police say the truck slammed into a utility pole, then struck a tree before finally landing in the front yard of a house. Officials say Britton was killed instantly. Near Millbrook, about 11 o'clock this morning, state troopers say 27-year-old Henry Lee McLemore of Prattville and his 3-year-old daughter, Lakeisha Yvette, were killed when the vehicle ran off the Cobbs Ford Road and struck a tree. State troopers say 3 passengers were injured, 2 seriously. Authorities say 29-year-old Vicki McLemore of Prattville and Henry Kane, age 46, also of Prattville, were seriously injured and taken to St. Margaret's Hospital. 7-year-old Travis Henry was taken to the Prattville Hospital, treated and released. Troopers say the Prattville paramedics had to use the jaws of life to cut the victims out of the car.
The car had hit 2 trees and the top was totally caved in, and we had to call Prattville's fire department to get a Hearst jaws of life out here to pull the top back in order to get to the people and to be able to extricate them.
Kim Davis, WSFA TV News, near Millbrook, Alabama.
Right now, when all this is going on, why would they ask for a $325 million more rate increase? There's petitions being circulated all over the state of Alabama. Right now, they're in 20 counties asking that the unfair rate increases be stopped, the pending rate increases be stopped, and that no more rate increases from this point on be accepted.
What do you say to people when they say, you know, I just can't afford it? There's got to be some other way. You know, why do they have to keep on and on and on?
Let's address the on and on and on first. We have had requests for 3 rate increases in the last 4 years. 2 of them were only recently settled. That came after years of appeal to the Supreme Court. And what this on and on and on is news about these old cases that never do get solved. We finally got these 2 settled. We took a beating on it. We left $42 million laying on the table in that settlement. And as you know, we included that 42 in this new asking. But the problem is regulatory lag. The problem is bad decisions by the Public Service Commission on these rate cases and seemingly unending court cases as a result of these bad decisions. And that's where the problem is.
Just a few of the petitions that's come in this morning from Houston County, and from Elmore County, from different counties.
As the lawyer representing the municipal electric organizers, would want to speak to Ms. Rawls' group, because that group, like all the rest of the customers,
I just would like to say, I can't imagine this very liquid fabric
to be worn to the wedding of her daughter. It's a lovely, soft print. Drapes in the back, giving it flow.
for your particular figure, fitted to your figure, now moving into the waistline.
I must say that Mimi's prettier than Esmeralda. Who was christened Jennifer, beautiful as a model. Do you have something to say? This has, when I look at it,
Done any other way except draped right on her.
yes, the lovely fluid lines of the bias cut. Thank you. Our next model is Carol. She's wearing the neck apron of jet beating. This is the Queen's mother. This is Edna from the same petticoat. The lovely heirloom look. Now, quite, and this was made for Sarah Lingham's wedding, Alice's daughter.
Lewis pleaded not guilty to all charges in the indictment handed down 2 weeks ago. His attorney, Bill Baxley, asked to review the indictment because Lewis received the court papers too late for them to come up with an adequate legal response. Judge Varner granted the time. The Snyders, Ronald and Rory, also pleaded not guilty to all charges, and their attorney, Ira DeMint, received 2 additional days to file motions. DeMint had already filed 8 motions and 1 memo in the case and indicated to Bonner there may be more. Bond for Lewis and the Snyders was set at $200 each. None of the 3 had any comment as they left federal court. This is Norman Lumpkin, WSFA TV News at Federal District Court.
All of them in the South, and it's been expanded to include several others like Alaska and Arizona, which one wouldn't ordinarily expect to be the same effect. Because right now, it's very different. In Georgia, it's Thomas and Thomasville, Thomas County. Of course, in Clemetka here, and then in anything that might dilute the minority vote, right to Washington and the Department of Justice would make a decision whether or not they understood it, which they have, and this can apply to certain counties as it is in Florida and North Carolina, where they have to print in both languages. If I'm not mistaken, the
Commission Chairman Mac McWhirter has asked the local school board to transfer the playground property at Baldwin Junior High School to the county to be used for a parking area or whatever is necessary in future jail construction. He says this is necessary since architectural plans have been drawn up with the new jail scheduled to be built on the existing employees' parking lot adjacent to the courthouse. McWhirter made the comments in a letter dated March 9th, where he explained that the commission is under court order to relieve the jail's overcrowded conditions and that the commission has come to the conclusion that a new jail facility is necessary. Students are still attending classes here at Baldwin Junior High School, but at the end of the 1981-82 school year, the school is scheduled to close and students will be transferred to Brubaker Junior High School. The Montgomery County School Board is expected to consider what will happen to the playground area this coming Thursday, and if it will in fact go for the new jail facility. Cassandra Taylor, WSFA TV News.
In the prosecution's opening statements, Attorney Bill McKnight of the Montgomery County DA's office told the jury that Jerry Renfro, an employee of the PSC, unlawfully solicited funds from George Hughes, an employee of a telephone company regulated by the PSC. McKnight says the alleged scheme first began in Huntsville at the Alabama-Mississippi Independent Telephone Association convention. McKnight says Renfro was there, in debt, and needed money. He says some of Renfro's friends raised money to give to him, but that only Hughes was the carrier of the money. The prosecution says it'll show that $2,800 to $2,900 was given to Renfro, but only $2,100 in checks could be traced, and the ink was hardly dry before the money changed hands. McKnight also says the Monroeville Telephone Company was granted a $300,000 rate increase, and Renfro worked on that case. But defense attorney George Beck rebutted, saying his client's unimpeachable character couldn't be attacked. Beck says Renfro isn't guilty of participating in a scheme to raise or take any money and didn't recommend any rate increase. The prosecution presented a number of witnesses in the opening trial day. The defense is expected to call its witnesses to the stand tomorrow. Jurors will hear their side of the story and perhaps will decide tomorrow whether or not the defendant, Jerry Renfro, did or did not violate the State Ethics Act. Kim Davis, WSFA TV News in Troy.
There ought to be some way that the
County Commissioner John Knight says he's concerned over the fact that the commission can be held in contempt for the jail's overcrowded conditions. But at the same time, the commission has no control over the number of inmates or when or who will be released when the jail's inmate population exceeds the court-ordered maximum. He then made a motion that the commission meet with local circuit judges and the sheriff to discuss the overcrowded conditions, to try to come up with a solution on what to do whenever the jail reaches the 145 inmate capacity. The commission then unanimously approved the motion and later voted to place 3 of the commission members, Mac McWhorter, Bill Joseph, and John Knight, on a building committee to meet with the architects to get an updated estimate on the proposed jail. Another committee made up of McWhorter, Frank Bray, and Joel Barfoot was assigned to meet with the sheriff and others to come up with some temporary solutions and find out how much those solutions will cost. McWhorter says the commission will wait to see what the school board does about the Baldwin School property before any other action is taken. Cassandra Taylor, WSFA TV News.
Senators who came to work in the dark of early morning ushered in the dark again tonight. During the 20-hour day, most senators took turns napping as the 3 death penalty opponents took turns debating. Senator Big Ed Robertson noted that finally his colleagues found out what it's like to work the 3rd shift.
Now, I'm glad this is happening to show you, Mr. President, and some of these other people what the midnight shift is like, and it'll get worse as the night goes on. Tomorrow night it'll get even worse.
Bleary-eyed senators had a chance to resolve their differences late in the afternoon with a compromise amendment. The amendment would require all 12 jurors to recommend the death penalty. The bill currently requires only 10 votes. But Senator Rio Kirkland accused the lieutenant governor of abandoning his impartial stance by asking senators individually to vote for the amendment. He implored the lieutenant governor to release senators from their commitments, but McMillan responded only by asking for further comments from other senators. The amendment failed by 1 vote. Debate resumed until senators agreed to adjourn and meet again Thursday morning at 10 o'clock, when the filibuster will continue. Lisa Nielsen, WSFA TV News at the Capitol.
It's a package of 4 bills that would limit the use of industrial development bonds. The sponsor of the package of bills, Representative Jack Venable of Tallahassee, says during the past year, retailers like McDonald's and Kmart's have started using the tax-free bonds. Venable says that's against the grain of the intent of the original law, which was passed to encourage industrial development in the state. Opponents of the bill, including Montgomery's Larry Dixon, are concerned that Venable is going too far in his restrictions. Representative Bob Gafford of Birmingham won approval of his bill that would essentially allow incumbent officials to accept political contributions during their term of office. Gafford's bill would stop the Ethics Commission from issuing any opinions on campaign contributions. Parts of Gafford's bill were deleted, including a provision that could have killed the Ethics Commission altogether. The House also passed a Senate bill to consolidate Athens State College, Calhoun Community, and Technical Schools. Sponsors say this consolidation would save money by combining the administrations of the 3 schools. And a House bill to require hotels and motels to install smoke detectors finally passed and has been sent to the Senate. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News in the House of Representatives.
I was extremely disappointed because you had made a commitment to the membership of this Senate that you would preside impartially and let the will of this Senate prevail. And for you to call members of this Senate to the chair or into your office and to tell them that you have to have their vote on this amendment, to me is not living up to the commitment that you made to this body. And this bill is very important to the people of this state. It's very important to me and to the other sponsors. And before this vote is taken, Mr. President, I would call upon you to release those people that you've secured these commitments from so that they may vote their true feelings without fear of having crossed the presiding officer in this body. And I call on you very sincerely to do that, to release them from those commitments and let them vote their true feelings on this matter. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Kirkland, thank you very much. Any further comments before we vote?
President.
Senator Callahan. The Senate will come to order. Everyone please rise. Mr. Hilliard, Mr. Holmes, Senator Robertson.
I was not trying to be derogatory or anything. I was honest in my observation of the three people filibustering this. And
I've been in the habit here recently of spending the night up on this capital punishment bill. I remember when the thing came up in committee over there, I didn't know we were going to take a vote. I got up by 7 o'clock that morning and came over here and spent the vote so far, one being the unanimous verdict requirement, or the attempt to get a unanimous verdict requirement, which is not really asking a whole lot when you consider the fact that the presence of some other people in the balcony, or if the chair cares, the chair can do it. So on behalf of the Senate, we thank you for being here.
Chairman of the group, Robert Will, says the project includes a new Museum of Fine Arts, an all-purpose theater for performing arts, and a library. He says 30 acres of prime city property has been donated by Mrs. Ida Bell Young, and the group has $1 million in pledges from other residents. But Will says all those donations are dependent on the city's commitment to the project. Will says that he realizes that economic conditions prevent the city from being able to finance the entire $10 million project, but suggested that the city go ahead and take action on the proposed $3 million museum and wait until the economy gets better before taking action on the 2 remaining projects. After the presentation, Council President Willie Peete called for a 20-minute recess, and when the Council returned to the chamber, no mention was made of Will's proposal. In the meantime, Council members have accepted Will's invitation to travel to Greenville, South Carolina to visit a similar cultural complex. The trip will be paid for by Multimedia Incorporated, the company which owns the Montgomery Advertiser-Journal. Cassandra Taylor, WSFA TV News.
The Senate will come to order. Everyone please rise.
The Senate came to order early this morning to resume debate on the death penalty. The majority who favor the death penalty are trying to wear down 3 filibustering senators who oppose the bill. The 3 are taking turns at the podium, each speaking up to 2 hours on each amendment. Senator Michael Figures from Mobile is unhappy that all amendments offered have been rejected. Figures says the senators have abdicated their duty by accepting the bill as it was drawn up by the Attorney General's office. He says the bill is poorly written and that he can't believe senators would allow themselves to be controlled by one person, especially one who's not a member of the legislature. Figures says the Senate shouldn't pass the death penalty bill unchanged any more than it would accept the governor's proposed budgets without questioning them. Lisa Nielsen, WSFA TV News at the Capitol.
Passed out to everybody. Ben has a copy, I believe. This is very preliminary.
The total cost of a market basket with 20 common food items was up 16 cents from $26.97 in January to $27.13 in February. According to Farm Bureau officials, the 0.6% rise compares to a 2.1% price increase recorded last month. According to survey coordinator Dick Fifield, price decreases resulting from cattle and hogs moving into the market at prices significantly lower than the cost of production were offset by increases in produce and peanut butter. Fifield says high interest rates and feed costs, which have driven production costs to record highs, are causing beef cattlemen to reduce their production. The food survey indicates that a market basket of food was the highest in South Alabama at $28.14 and the lowest in Northeast Alabama at $26.35. As far as the price of peanut butter, experts say the price will remain high at least into the fall peanut harvest. Dan Black, WSFA TV News.
The federal government pumped $10 million into disaster aid projects after Frederick struck Mobile. The money went for food, shelter, and other items necessary for victims to survive until everything got back to normal. Federal agents are now looking into allegations of hundreds of bribes and payoffs between contractors and unnamed disaster officials. One investigator told me the payoffs could top $1 million, all from funds designed to help hurricane victims. Another official say we may never know how much federal money found its way into the hands of some federal and state disaster officials in the funds of payoffs from mobile home contractors and other vendors providing services at mobile home parks set up with disaster funds. FBI agents took notes at the theft trial of former Mobile disaster head Lee Kelo. Last week, Kelo was convicted of theft in connection with the Mobile disaster. Montgomery County District Attorney Jimmy Evans says he's turned over information on the cases to the Justice Department.
They have had many communications with our office toward their individual responsibility, which is the investigation, prosecution of federal crimes involving fraud in federal funds.
Federal grand juries are expected to be called into session both in Montgomery and Mobile to consider indictments against contractors, public officials, and others who may have been involved in the Mobile project. This is Norman Lumpkin, WSFA TV News reporting.
Phil, we're going to catch quite a few fish down there, more than most people realize.
Is it different from what you all had fished in the other classics?
Well, we fished a river up in New York, but this is going to be a different type of river here. Up there we had a lot more rock than we're going to fish in down here. This is a old southern river that's slow moving, got the muddy water in it. We're gonna have a lot different fishing conditions we've ever fished for fish in a classic.
You went fishing with John Powell?
I went fishing with Uncle John Monday here.
Did he tell you any lies?
Some lies, some truth, some half-truth, and other things I won't mention.
Bo, has winning the classic changed your life much?
Oh, I get noticed a lot more than I thought I would. I found that out down here at Washington Ferry. Evidently, Bass Publications gets around, papers pick up my picture quite a bit around there here.
Anybody ask you for your autograph?
Well, I traded baits with kids down there, and we had some people just stop me on the lake. Are you Bo Dowden? That's something that hasn't happened to me in the past.
Hughes sat motionlessly and spoke softly during his testimony. Hughes says following the telephone company convention in Huntsville in 1978, he returned home to Monroeville and made several calls to friends in the industry to raise money to help Renfro, whom he says was having financial difficulty. Hughes told the court his efforts resulted in $2,100 in checks for Renfro. Hughes says he cashed those checks at the bank in Monroeville, but actually raised about $2,800 to $2,900. Hughes says he later carried the money to Montgomery and gave it to Renfro at his office in the PSC building. Hughes says he told Renfro the money was a favor with no strings attached. In further testimony, the prosecution asked Hughes if the $300,000 rate increase granted to the Monroeville Telephone Company was done so prior to the time the money was raised. Hughes says yes. The final ruling was granted in October 1978. Defense attorney George Beck then asked Hughes if he or those who wrote the checks were indicted. Hughes says they weren't. Did Renfro solicit money or promise to do anything for you or the contributors? Again, Hughes answered saying no. Did Renfro influence the rate increase? Hughes said no. Telephone company officials who say they wrote the checks also testified today. They all confirmed that they attended the convention and gave the money to help Renfro with his personal financial difficulty, but they said Renfro never asked for any monetary favors. Kim Davis, WSFA TV News, Troy. Renfro didn't take the stand during the three-day trial held in his hometown. He sat calmly throughout the trial as the state attempted to prove he unlawfully accepted $2,100 from George Hughes, an employee of the telephone company regulated by the PSC. Today's brief testimony centered on Renfro's good reputation, as cited by several character witnesses, and the reputation of the telephone company officials who took the stand earlier in the trial. But PSC employee Delmer DuBois called those phone company officials' reputation bad. He said based on their work with the PSC, he wouldn't believe them under oath. In his closing arguments, defense attorney George Beck told the jury there wasn't any evidence to show Renfro had a scheme to get money to influence the Monroeville Telephone Company's rate increase case. He said no witnesses testified that Renfro asked for anything in return after the increase was granted. Beck said the cloak of innocence draped Renfro, but in his final statements, prosecuting attorney Bill McKnight said the cloak was stripped and Renfro was no longer clothed with that presumption. McKnight said the state had gone much further in meeting its burden of proof. McKnight told the jury that Renfro took the money while an employee of the PSC is still working there, and if the jury acquits the defendant, he'll still be working there. The jury began deliberating at 1:55 and returned shortly with the innocent verdict. The jury deliberated for about 20 minutes before finally rendering a verdict. After the decision was read, Renfro reacted emotionally, then turned and hugged his wife and family and said, "After a year of this, I'm glad it's over. Today is the anniversary day of Jerry Renfro's indictment." Kim Davis, WSFA TV News, Troy.
Here at home at the state capitol, the three-man filibuster in the Alabama Senate is completing its 21st hour. The Senate has been in session since shortly after midnight this morning. Lisa Nielsen was there, and it's still going on, Lisa.
Michael Figures from Mobile is carrying on a filibuster now. The Senate came very close to being able to go home about an hour ago as senators voted on a compromise amendment. The amendment would have required a unanimous jury vote for the jury to recommend death. But when the amendment came up for a vote, there were accusations that Lieutenant Governor George McMillan was using his office as president of the Senate to urge legislators to vote for the compromise.
I was extremely disappointed because you had made a commitment to the membership of this Senate that you would preside impartially and let the will of this Senate prevail. And for you to call members of this Senate to the chair or into your office and to tell them that you have to have their vote on this amendment, to me is not living up to the commitment that you made to this body. And this bill is very important to the people of this state. It's very important to me and to the other sponsors. And before this vote is taken, Mr. President, I would call upon you to release those people that you've secured these commitments from so that they may vote their true feelings without fear of having crossed the presiding officer in this body. And I call on you very sincerely to do that, to release them from those commitments and let them vote their true feelings on this matter. Thank you, Mr. President.
The compromise failed by a vote of 16 to 15, and the filibuster resumed, with the death recommendation still requiring 10 of 12 juror votes. That is a section of the bill which Governor Fob James supports. The senators have been going since 12:20 this morning. They spent 2 hours on other business before considering the death penalty. Among the bills passed in the early hours was one to require the state to give notice when your driver's license is about to expire. And in the House, the representatives are continuing debate on a number of bills, including one that would limit the use of industrial development bonds. Chris Grimshaw has more.
It's a package of 4 bills that would limit the use of industrial development bonds. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News in the House of Representatives.
Continued for 21 hours, 15 today and 6 hours last week. And since the compromise amendment failed, it's possible that the 3 senators will continue their debate until the legislative day ends at midnight.
Lisa, one question. I know it's probably hard to hear down there with all of the noise, but will all of this necessarily end right at midnight?
Well, right now they're scheduled to, if they continue till midnight, they're scheduled to come back on Thursday, but it's very possible that they could pass a resolution resuming as the next legislative day a little bit after midnight tonight. And that, of course, is an effort to try and test the endurance of the 3 senators who are filibustering.
Fine. Thank you very much, Lisa Nielsen, live at the Alabama Senate.
Situation that's not a gift.
Gift, how you in this section of law?
To and staff to study this, I mean, whether it's the proper word, analyze it, research it, I guess is the word they use, and come back with a more detailed, not related at all. I just feel like that we would serve the commission better if we had a little more time.
Well, I don't. It's just putting off an inevitable decision's got to be made.
Governor James says the current death penalty bill is modeled after the Florida law, which has been upheld by the U.S. Supreme Court. And the governor says he doesn't understand why some senators are trying to amend the bill by requiring a unanimous vote of all 12 jurors for an execution verdict.
If that Senate puts in that you've got to have a 12 out of 12 vote to get an execution, they have killed the death penalty law. And I don't think they will do that. I think we need a death penalty. I think the city, and I hope and pray the city of Atlanta, Georgia, will have need for a death penalty in the very near future. I do not understand some of the shenanigans that are going on up there.
Governor later said the unanimous vote would kill the effect of the bill, not the bill itself. In other matters, Governor James says he hasn't yet filled PSC Commissioner Pete Matthews' soon-to-be vacated seat, but will probably interview applicants next week. Matthews leaves the PSC next Tuesday. The governor also told reporters he met with State Democratic Party Chairman Jimmy Knight to discuss the future of the Democratic Party. But James gave no clue to the conversation's outcome. Jane Matheson, WSFA.
say that we were going to keep them from doing anything would be folly, but we certainly hope to ask to cause them to scale it down. $325 million is a lot of money. I don't even think in that type figures, but we feel like perhaps they need an increase, but a much smaller amount. Same way with South Central Bell. We feel like that, of course, if they don't have any input into it from people, the Public Service Commission, this type of thing, well, then we'll have to accept the facts as presented to them from Powhatan.
A reduction in a number of federal programs coming to the state. This was one problem that the governor faced in making his recommendation. Trust fund budget. All I did yesterday, I recognized that there was the possibility, if the amendment that would have required the jury recommendation to be unanimous for the death penalty, I saw that that would get the people who were engaging in the extended debate to sit down so that we could go ahead and pass this death penalty. And I shared that information with members of the Senate, not in a way to coerce anyone, because I'll guarantee if I was in the business of coercing, it wouldn't have been 16 to 15. It would have been very much the other direction.
One thing these police chiefs and sheriffs agree on is that the future of the 3 regional police training academies looks bleak. The Alabama Law Enforcement Planning Agency has temporarily bailed the academies out, giving them $20,000 each to keep them running until October. But after that, there's no money forthcoming. The governor says consolidating the academies would save money, but Sheriff's Association President Tom Purvis disagrees.
We're opposed to training being under one roof because Department of Public Safety